Hello and welcome to this special CNBC Africa broadcast with myself, Fifi Peters. The focus in part is going to be on the 100-day mark that the South African National Petroleum Company, or SANPC, has officially reached, or actually just surpassed. You will remember that it was the result of consolidation between three primary assets, namely Petro SA, iGas, and the Strategic Fuel Fund that formed a single state-owned entity. This happened amid tough economic headwinds, a sluggish GDP growth, and a pressing need for energy security. But many have questioned whether now is the time or the place for another government-owned enterprise. But is the SNPC delivering results, or is it adding red tape? What is behind the real plan behind this controversial developments regarding potential fracking over in the Karoo? And is South Africa at the cusp of gaining and finally capitalizing on the current commodities boom, or could we once again be bystanders? To discuss this and more, I am joined by the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources of South Africa, Minister Gwede Mantashe. Sir, and thanks so much for your time.
Morning, Fifi.
Let's start off with the SANPC, because all the stakeholders, sir, that I spoke with, from the CEO to the chair of one of the assets or one of the companies that formed it, industry players who know you quite well as private sector players, have all acknowledged that this essentially was one of your babies in terms of the formation of the company and also the support to get it going. We have passed the 100-day mark in terms of its official establishment, and I'd like to get your assessment of how things are going so far, sir.
You know, Africa is a least developed continent, but there's a lot of resources that should make a difference. Our resources are beginning to be labeled in negative terms. Coal is a dirty product, fossil fuels, their time is going to end, and so forth. But those are what developed countries developed on the back of. But all of a sudden, we must not touch those commodities. I'm one of the people who believe that you never move to a new technology without testing it. You keep your old technology, service it, before you test the resilience and the reliance of the new technology. So I'm one of the people who say coal is going to be around for a long time. Sure. Fossil fuels are going to be around for a long time. They provide, petroleum provides about 60% of energy sources in the world. But when you talk of it, it takes a second fiddle to renewables, which provide about 10%. So that is an irony and a contradiction of development and intellectual competition.
Sure. So you've spoken quite a bit about the natural deposits that we do have as a continent, focusing specifically on the likes of coal, even petroleum. So you touched a little bit on renewables, and I do know the stakeholders at the SANPC did say in their conversations with us that there could possibly be a mandate for them to also pursue a renewable path. But just once again, broadly speaking, on the operations of this newly formed state-owned entity, so how do you assess how they have been performing, and what is your overall vision for them in sort of the old commodities or energy sources, as it were, as well as the renewable ones?
We said when we set it up, we're setting up a South African petroleum champion. That is what SNPC should be. Sure. It should be a champion. It should promote, it must produce, it must compete, it must facilitate. It's a contradictory role. Sometimes I'm being asked the question, why do you set this thing when there's the private sector? I say, the private sector is okay, but the private sector gets irritated by a weak state. The state must be formidable to facilitate and compete. And that's what SNPC is going to do. It is still in making. We can't stand up boldly and say it is running now, but it is taking good shape, slow. Our brief is that take your time, get it right, don't rush and collapse. Because falling and standing up is different from working slower and succeed. And I think they're doing relatively well.
Sure.
For example, you can look into our assets. I-Gas is already in there, SFF is there. Part of Petro SA, except the refinery, is already in there. So it's quite a formidable entity. It must just be operationalized. Unfortunately, any entity depends on the capacity to be what it should be. If you have got the right skills, the right speed, the right ethics, it will run at a speed that is faster than anybody imagined. We've looked into examples of similar companies in the world, went to Angola, went to Brazil, we've gone all over, checked these companies. They're playing a very critical role in the economy.
Sure. One could argue, though, when you look at South Africa as a state, that we are quite weak. I mean, growth has been below 1% for the better part of a decade, and you yourself have even expressed your discontent at the performance of the economy, which then goes on to talk about the role of the private sector as you envision, once again with the SNPC. So the role of the private sector in partnering with this entity right now, and also I suppose one could argue, or one could ask, the support that government may give the SNPC further from what has already been given, sir?
You see, I always tell people that life is about choices. I'm on record as saying that the next growth path of this country depends on oil and gas. We must discover, exploit oil and gas. Then we are going to see a new growth path for this economy. If we don't do that, we'll remain a low growth trajectory economy. And therefore SNPC is talking to that reality, that you must go there, look for oil, look for gas, drill, exploit, process, and trade. That's what we're saying. And our view is that there are quite a number of points where there is promising a potential of both oil and gas. Take the Total Energies, 3.7 TCF that they left in Southern Cape. It's quite a huge discovery. We are not going to look for it. It is there, it is found. But Total Energies left it because they felt that it was quite difficult to exploit it because it is in the Agalas current, which is the second fastest current in the world. Therefore, it was quite difficult. They wanted to sell that gas above market rates. We said, no, we can't afford anything above market rates, but new entities are coming together to exploit that gas. It is discovered already. Number two, we are convinced that south of the Orange Mouth, you are going to find sizable deposits of oil. And I am not even talking of shale gas in the Karoo. So all those points are promising that let's go and exploit them. Let's confront the issue of being taken to court every time we tell them that we should not touch oil and gas. It spoils the environment. We are arguing consistently within the state that it is not ecology versus economics. It is economics and ecology integrated. And therefore ecology must impose a responsibility on us to exploit these resources in a responsible way and protect the environment, but do development. You don't stop development because you protect the environment, because you're going to be in a very strange way of breathing fresh air in darkness.
I suppose it speaks to the relevant and the adequate safeguards that will allow for that balance to happen in the appropriate manner. And would you say that we have it right now, sir?
You never get a mining license in South Africa without getting an environmental assessment certificate. You never get it. You never get an oil permit or a petroleum exploration permit unless you get that certificate. And the reason for that is that it should be balanced. What is in the extreme in South Africa is to allow NGOs to actually interrupt development. And my own view is that many of these NGOs are not registered. We don't know the source of funding. It may be deliberate to disrupt our own development. For example, SNPC is going to have assets, takeover assets of Petro SA, which is located in Ghana. They were operating freely. We're in South Sudan, we're doing well. So as we move into Africa, we're learning from the continent what should we do different. For example, we are suggesting that our experience in Namibia is that instead of allowing economic stalemates to be resolved in courts, let's have a tribunal that accelerates that process and resolve them within a short space of time. That will actually balance ecology and economics.
Going back to the point that you made about shale gas, you have spoken quite a bit about the gas deposits over in Mozambique, gas deposits that even us as South Africa enjoy spoils of, although you have cited the fact that they are on the decline. So regarding your vision for SNPC in being this champion for oil, petroleum, as well as gas, exploration specifically in what you are hoping to see, and I imagine that your government as well. Would you say that the regulatory environment right now is conducive for the kind of activity that you envision, sir?
It is. We passed a law that established petroleum as a sector. Okay. It used to be an appendage of mining. We have passed a law that separates it and allow it to grow and establish itself as a sector. That law is not a bill, it's an act of parliament. Now, it has all the regulations there, which are separate from mining. Our view is that even when we talk of the gas cliff, we talk of the gas cliff because we are analyzing our dependence on imported gas. We are not taking into account the potential of our own gas. And our view is that if we exploit our own gas, we'll go very far. For example, Petro SA was established on just above 1 TCF of gas deposits, huge entity. 3.7 TCF discovered by Total Energy is much bigger. We can do many, many things in South Africa. For example, we've got Avedia in Saldanha. We bought that company, big share, majority share, from a Nigerian company. It's in Saldanha. It is importing liquefied petroleum gas, LPGs, which is bottled gas. And once we exploit that and use it fully, it is actually adding value to electricity and reduce the use of firewood and coal as a source of energy. You begin to distribute bottled gas in villages. Once we do that, we're going to get there. I'm a great believer of building state capacity.
Sure.
That's why in my department, we have not got rid of any of the state assets. We are rebuilding them.
Sure. With that said, so if it's your view that the legislation on the ground is conducive, I would argue that one would also need quite a lot of capital to encourage such exploratory activities and the discovery and the findings thereof. We've spoken to a couple of private sector players within the industry, and while you say that it is your view that state capacity should remain resilient, we've also seen that the South African government, has sought private partners in other areas, most notably in energy. If we look at the unbundling that's happening there was a move also in the aviation sector, although that's a little bit on hold. We're seeing it in logistics as well, with the invitation of private partners with the ports and rail operators. So my question then to you, sir, is regarding the state capacity. Do you see a share for private ownership within these assets? And I suppose if the answer to that is yes, how much of a share?
Economics is a strange issue, very strange animal. You don't create entrepreneurs, you facilitate them. I must be an entrepreneur, struggle to build an entity, and that must be facilitated. The unfortunate part of South Africa, which is unique to us, is that if the state facilitates the growth of emerging capital, it will easily be classified as corruption. Easily. But the reality of the matter, everywhere you go, capital formation post-independent are facilitated by the state. It's not capital, it's not corruption. It is the role and the responsibility of the state to facilitate capital formations post-independent. But in South Africa, we're not in that situation. You were very careful. When the state must assess, for example, we've started a project there of artisanal miners. We do support them financially. We're very reluctant because it can easily be seen as actually creating our own Javelin scenario. Well, actually, the emerging small-scale miners want to get into that sector, and they must be facilitated by the state, and that be part of capital formations post-independence. We don't do it. We can do it more and correctly, and it should be taken off the minds of the people that when the state assists individual emerging capital, it is corruption.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's how the state assists, and I think that the individuals perhaps who are a little bit scared are just cognizant of our recent history, so coming from the legacy of state capture where there were incidences like that. But I do get your point. What about existing players? Big players within the industry right now?
Big players, there's a strange development in that regard. If you look at all the big players, they are pulling out of the garage networks, for example. They are focusing on drilling and exploitation. Look at a company like Engine. They've sold their garages. Look at a company like Shell. They're selling their garages, but they are going for exploration. And that is a reshaping capital. Out of that, we must have new players emerging. I always boast that I'm running a department which is the most and the fastest transforming department called mining. And people say, mining, transforming. I say, go and do your assessment. You'll see that coal mining is actually more than 80% black-owned and black-managed.
Sure.
You see, you go to manganese, it is going at about just over 50% black-owned and black-managed. And it is growing in PGMs. Slow in gold because of the depth and the dangers involved. But that emergence of new players is not disinvestment. It is emerging of new players who were never given access to the economy under apartheid. They have an opportunity today to get into the economy, and many of them are coming there very active. You know, I was telling people about a company called Sereti in coal.
Yeah.
Asset base of that company is bigger than Pick and Pay. It's black-owned and black-managed, and it's growing very fast. And you can take Exaro, they've just taken over Tsipi Manganese, and they say it's a purchase. I say it's not a purchase, it's a consolidation. A new conglomerate is going to emerge out of it. And from where I'm seated, I'm actually appreciating and encourage that development, rather than crying about old investors who are here and not. You know, I always criticize my friends in Anglo. I say to them, Anglo, 2 years after the Nationalist Party took power, they opened the Free State coalfields. 2 years after the ANC took power, they pulled out of the Free State coalfields. And people never noticed that development. I notice it because I'm in the sector. I observe it very closely. I take details of what is happening. And today, what was called Anglo Gold is not having a single operation in South Africa.
Sure.
Everybody else is running. Their operation taken over by Harmony, which is part of ARM, which is, to me, a blessing in disguise of the black capital emerging and participating in the economy. And we should not be ashamed of that.
Sure. So talking about the politics then in mining, there's a lot of politics going on right now regarding our current mineral deposits, the gold, the PGMs, what some consider critical minerals, what you consider to be critical minerals. And of course, the politics is being driven by what is happening internationally by way of the resetting of relations globally and the resetting of trade relationships between countries. Right now, most the critical minerals, as it were, are exempt from tariffs from the US, but we don't know where things are going in future, just given how fast news develops around this space. What is your vision then for South Africa's new relationship with the US under this environment?
You know, there was an article last week which said Mantashe and Neil Froneman are fighting over this. And I clarified, I said, no, we're not fighting with Neil Froneman. Neil Froneman ran a company called Sibanye Stillwater. Stillwater is an American company. So he is not asking for new favors. He wants to run his company normally as a South African American company, Sibanye Stillwater. And I have no qualms with that.
Sure.
But the policy of the country on critical minerals must not just talk to the US, it must talk to, we have critical minerals, how are they going to add value to the economy? One of the things we're insisting on is value addition close to the point of production, rather than exploiting raw commodities, because the pit-to-port system of mining is outdated and it exports jobs and profits. It must be done here. We are insisting on that, whether it is US or anything. Number two, we are encouraging mining companies to diversify their access to the markets. They must not focus on one market. They must go to other markets, because diversification of markets in itself is part of managing the risk. You see? Because you can't depend on one country which dictates on everybody.
Sure.
It alienates everybody. And do talk to the US, negotiate the relationship with the US, but don't lock yourself there.
Sure.
Diversify your interests.
So one can argue that the US is not just one country, or not just one ordinary country. It's a significant powerhouse in the world, sir. And that's why you are seeing various countries also trying to concede and negotiate on how to move forward. But going back to the...
Let me explain that.
Go ahead.
It is our second biggest trading partner. Our biggest trading partner is China.
And often what's said about China is that what we trade in China is the raw materials that you're trying to get away from, whereas with the US, there's a lot more beneficiated goods that go to that part of the world.
The issue is that, you know, when you export coal, people say, why do you export coal? Why don't you process it? I say to them, coal is the most beneficiated mineral in South Africa because it is converted into electricity. And exporting what is remaining is important for business, okay? Because coal is not just an asset of the state, it's an asset of the country, and there are business people in there who are actually making a living out of trading. We say add value at close to point of production, but we cannot outlaw export. Because if we do that, we'll be tampering directly with the running of businesses that are important for the economy, because the economy is not only looked at value addition. They will talk about GDP, they will talk about export earnings. Mining contributes about 6% to the GDP, but it is one of the leading sectors in terms of export earnings.
Sure.
And that must continue.
Sure, and perhaps it may continue even better, just given what is going on with some commodity prices in the past year. But so I want to go back to the issue with the US and perhaps maybe the misinformation or the misperception regarding your stance in that of the CEO of Sibanye Stillwater, Mr. Neil Froneman. So from my understanding, there was a deal that was proposed by mining executives regarding how to furnish... All right. So please, can you clarify that?
Not mining executives.
Right.
It was few executives in the mining industry, mainly Neil, working with Ricky Menel. They are working together in one stable. And that...
What was their offer that you didn't like, sir?
Let me tell you. What they didn't do is to have a proposal of the mining industry. Mining industry, to me, is represented by the Mineral Council, which is having 90 mining companies affiliated to. That Mineral Council was not involved. And as long as you don't involve the Mineral Council, you don't involve our department, our labor is not aware. That cannot be a proposal of the industry. It is not. It is a proposal of individual companies, and they are driven by self-interest. But we should have an approach as a country. And that's why in developing the critical mineral strategy, we involved the Mineral Council fully because we knew that we didn't have a monopoly of wisdom. They have ideas, they have views, they run minds, and we must talk together and produce a policy together.
Sure. I mean, I remember when I spoke with you earlier on during the Africa Mining Indaba, when the situation around tariffs was in the pipeline, we didn't quite know who got what rate. And it was your position, and it has continued to be your position from what I've seen in media reports, so that, you know, South Africa should not allow itself to be bullied, and that you believe that we do have these valuable mineral deposits, and we should use it as a defense mechanism, as it were. Some stakeholders say that shouldn't be the approach when dealing with the US.
No,
so help us understand.
An approach in dealing with whatsoever. Nobody must ever dictate terms to us, and our experience is that we must just comply. Our views are very important in shaping policy around our minerals. You know, there's something called critical minerals. People try to divide in many ways. I have told them that, listen, every mineral is critical. It depends on where you are, because everybody defines critical minerals in terms of their needs. For example, the emphasis of the US is the defense industry. If you go to China, it's technology. If you go to EU, it's green economy. Here, we look into export, we look into employment, we look into all those aspects to define critical minerals. So all minerals are critical from where I'm standing.
Sure.
And these minerals must be protected, and they must create wealth for this country.
Sure. I think on that point, we will pause the interview for now. So thank you for the wonderful insights in terms of the role of all stakeholders within your sector. Of course, we spoke a lot broadly about dynamics in the global markets as well, and South Africa's positioning with some key and perhaps not key role players in the global ecosystem. Thanks once again to my guest for this special broadcast, the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Minister Gwede Mantashe. From myself, Fifi Peters, it is goodbye for now.